Hello everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. I hope everybody's been painting and having a wonderful time with the little sketchbooks that we made last week. If you're curious about how to make your own watercolor sketchbook, you can look at the paper crafting Monday and Saturday of the past couple of Facebook Lives and see a really fun way that you can make a sketchbook that you can use doing your nature studies. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do a nature study. And today I was out in the orchard and there was a low-hanging branch that I know was going to bug the lawnmower. So I got out there earlier today and I cut these little apples off. I don't like cutting the fruiting branches off the tree if I can avoid it, but in this case I thought that would be for the best because they were in danger of getting ripped off by because of the weight of the apples making them hang down. People were banging their heads on them. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm just going to make a quick little note card, and this is a really great exercise for a beginning watercolor. If you are new to watercolor, you may want to check out my upcoming beginning watercolor classes, which are still open to registration until Friday. So you've got 2 more days to register. It's $50. It's an introduction to watercolor and it covers all the basics, including your setup and your materials and some exercises that you can do to prepare for the full course that's coming right up. So what you have to do is go to my website, dandelioncottagedesign.com, and subscribe to notes. And when you do that, you will get a second email asking you to confirm your email address. And once you make that confirmation, you will be on the list and you will be getting a monthly listing of all my upcoming watercolor and paper crafting classes and a way to register for them, and some other bits and pieces about what's going on in the gardens here at Dandelion Cottage. So let's get busy. Let's stop talking and we'll begin this wonderful exercise in how to paint a round fruit. So I have 2 apples here. One is all green, but I like this little leaf that has some yellow on it. And then this apple, even though it's tiny, it already began to get a little color on it. So I thought those were pretty nice. I also have a tiny little apple that I don't think would have developed that was attached, but it fell off. And then I've got just a couple of leaves to look at for reference. I have a piece of hot press watercolor paper, and this has already been cut down to size for a note card. And I'm just checking my settings here. I want to make sure that this is working. Piece of hot press watercolor. Okay. There we go. Okay, now if anybody's out there, please leave a message. Put a comment down below so that I can see if my comments are working or not. I'm trying some new settings in my technology here, and maybe I'll be able to see some comments. Alright, so to get started, there are typically 2 sides to the watercolor paper. One is the screen side and one is the mold side. I'm using the mold side, which is the side that is less regular. And I don't know if I'm going to do both of these or not, but let's just see how they look together. It's kind of nice. Now, just because I have this in front of me doesn't mean that I'm going to be painting the whole thing, but I can look and see what I like and make selections as I go along. So to begin with, I'm just going to take a pale green mixture with a lot of yellow in it, and I'm going to begin to get these things situated on my paper. And I'm keeping my edges soft for now. And I'm paying attention to the direction of light, which is coming from this direction, as you can see. And I'm looking to see how the design of the leaves looks on my paper. So that's what's going to determine how many of these leaves are going to stay in the picture and how many I'm going to edit out. All right, well, I think that's enough for a start. I also have a paper towel in my left hand that I'm using to blot my brush, and I've got a little sponge over on the right side to help to control the amount of water that I'm using on the paper. Now I'm just going to drop in some pale red tones on here so that can blend in. While I'm painting in other areas. Now this green apple has quite a lot of yellow in it, so I'm adding some yellow. Now remember, as you're painting with watercolor, they dry much lighter than what they appear when they're wet. So don't be afraid to put plenty of paint on there. Maybe you should zoom in a little bit. Let's see if this helps. Oh, I see a comment. Yay. Okay, so this is working. Hello, Ginger. Thank you. Okay. Now I'm going to mix a medium green, and I'm just mixing my yellow and my blue to get a medium green. There's a little bit of red in there, so it's not too bright. And I just want to start establishing some of the areas where the colors are going to be darker. Now in this particular picture, I did not do a pencil drawing first. I just wanted this to be a pretty little spontaneous kind of a picture. But I am using the point of my brush to draw with. And if you have a good brush that forms a nice point, then you can get a good size brush, something that's a size 7 or an 8, say, and still have the ability to draw some very fine details, all with the one brush. So I advise my students to always get the largest brush that they can afford. And that will also help you to not get too picky with your painting. Now, the other thing that I've noticed is that oftentimes when we're setting up our fruit or flowers or whatever our specimens may be for a still life, that our first inclination is to find the most beautiful, the most perfect specimen that we can get. But I've noticed that it's the ones that have all these wonderful little marks and discolorations in the leaves and so forth that make for the most interesting pictures. So don't discard something because it has a little blemish on it. That could make your painting look a lot better. I'm going to see if I can add a little more red to this. And I'm also going to increase the yellow on this one. So I'm just in these areas that I've painted, there's a degree of dampness. It's a very humid day here today. The sun's just beginning to come out a little bit now for the first time. And I'm letting the paint, as it moves, do the painting. We'll be practicing all of these different techniques in the upcoming watercolor class. So if you're interested and you sign up, you will be getting a materials list of all the paper and the paints and so forth that I like to use. And I keep it very simple. Just a couple of things, so you don't have to go out and buy every color and every fancy thing, but I've got 4 colors that I recommend in addition to the sort of standard 8 or 10 that I like to keep on hand, and also the various types of watercolor paper. I'll be describing the differences between them all and what works best for what. In addition to the materials list, you'll also get a first lesson that you can practice with while you're waiting for your equipment to arrive if you have to order. And that first video really gives you everything you need to know to begin with understanding and the ability to create three-dimensional looking form on a two-dimensional surface. Now, as I continue to paint here, I'm just improving my drawing, and I am increasing my values. Let you get a closer look at that. Just very, very simple. You know, it's not, I'm not trying to create a photographic image. I'm just creating an impression. And I'm being careful not to overmix the colors too much so that they can do what they want as they swirl around while they're still wet. Now I'm mixing up a violet, kind of a blue-violet color, and I'm going to use this as an accent in a couple of different places. So this is a great way to see what your range of values is. So I can see I've got a lot of room yet that I can explore in terms of values. So I'm going to go back to my green mixture. This time I'm making a medium green with the yellow and blue with just a little bit of red to tone it down slightly. And I'm going to work on a couple of these leaves. So I'm going to add a little more paint, and the leaves have a slightly serrated edge. See if I can show you that. I think you can see that. So I want to get a little bit of that feeling by just using the tip of my brush along the edges like that. Here and there. Less is more. And this is a good example of why it's often better to work with a larger brush so that you don't get caught up with all these details. So really, it's just an idea or an impression of what's there. Going to clean this edge up a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to go back a third time into that red, and now I'm putting a nice warm rich tone. Oops, got a little blob of paint on the brush there. Let's dissolve that. There we go. I'm just pushing that around a little bit. And while that's still wet, I'm going to take a very cool, a little more violety red, and put that just here as it turns into shadow. Okay. Now going back to my green apple. There we go. Okay, so I'm starting to see all your comments on there. Thank you so much. I'm glad I finally figured out how to do that. Took me long enough. Hello to Quebec. Now I'm just going to drop some darker green in this apple to begin to develop that form a little more. And I think you should be able to see that that's starting to get a more of a two-dimensional quality, or I'm sorry, a three-dimensional quality to it. I'm just loading up these areas with pigment now to make it nice and rich. And I think these leaves need a little more attention. So let's go back to the leaves. We had some very hot, dry days here last week, so a lot of these leaves are already looking a little dried up. And I'm just dropping more paint. So they're plenty wet. So if I now drop a little bit of the darker color, that will move around nicely and create that nice shadow effect. Here we go. All right, now I don't want to overwork this. So the only thing left that I'd like to do is to put a few of these little details in of the, this little, I don't know what you call that, the end of the fruit. So I'm going to take some yellow and some red and some blue and mix it all together and get a nice warm brown mixture. Get in there. And then I'll go back to that violet mixture, this is a blue violet, nice and dark, with a little bit of yellow in it to tone it down a bit. And I'm just going to, now I think that's too wet, so let me just check this. So if you think that a place that you want to work, I wanted to put something in here, but I see there's a puddle. I'm just using my brush to mop up that extra moisture out of there. So my brush is clean. I've blotted it with my paper towel. So it's what we call a thirsty brush. So I'm able to go back into this area and mop up some of that extra paint that's pooling up there. When you work this tiny, I do this for the card making and for the camera, but ideally I'd be working much larger than this. And I'd be standing up and getting away from my work and going back and forth. But to show you some of these things, I'm just working on a very small piece, and the paper gets saturated very quickly. So if you feel like you need to let it dry out a little bit, there's a number of different ways that you can do that. You can do what I just described with the thirsty brush, or you can get up and go do something else for a little while and come back to it later when it's a little bit drier. Or some people like to use a hair dryer or a heat gun. I'm not a big fan of that because I want the pigments to move naturally. I don't want to push them around. I want all of the little granules to disperse in a way that is pleasing to the eye. Sometimes if you use a heat gun or a blow dryer, you can push the paint around and lose some of that nice quality. And still, I don't feel like that dark area in my red one is dark enough, so I'm going to go back in and see if I can get that. That's better. And while I'm at it, I'll go back into the green again as well. This comes back to it drying lighter than what it appears. So you may have to go back in and add a little more pigment. All right, now I'm going to see if I can get those dark violet accents in. Let's see if they move around too much. A little bit is okay. But I do want them to stay more or less where I'm putting them. Okay. Well, I like that. Get this where you can see it. There you go. So have some fun with all my talking and messing around with stuff. This took me less than half an hour to do, and it was a lot of fun. And this is going to make a really pretty card. I have a card base here ready to go. This is the very vanilla thick cardstock, and this is a book opening card, but I'm going to put it on its side. And I'm not going to glue it down yet because it's too wet, but I'll just place it here so that you can get the effect. So you can see that that old olive looks really nice with the greens of these apples. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you watching the video and leaving comments below. And I also want to remind you I have a YouTube channel that's called Dandelion Cottage, and there are a whole bunch of videos that you can take a look at, see if there might be something that interests you there. And again, here is my website at dandelioncottagedesign.com, and I hope that you will go there and subscribe to Notes and get on my email list so I can let you know about the upcoming monthly classes, and in particular this beginning watercolor class, which is so important, and it will help to set you up for the rest of your watercolor journey. And you just have 2 more days to register for that, so look for that while you're there. So stay well, stay creative. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you again on Paper Crafting Saturday.